Need a motion to return to open session, please.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I need a motion to certify that only the items discussed in closed session were those items that were defined in the enabling motion, and only those items that are in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. From closed session, we have a number of motions to be made, and the first one is, I believe, for our student A.
I move that student A be exempt from Montgomery County Schools for religious purposes or concerns.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Roll call, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We now have a motion for student B.
I make a motion that student B be readmitted to Montgomery County Public Schools starting tomorrow.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Need a motion for student C.
I also make a motion for student C that student C be readmitted to Montgomery County Public Schools starting tomorrow.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Need a motion for student D.
I move we long-term suspend student D through date served.
Second.
Roll call, please. Okay.
Staying for I wasn't here for this one.
Yes.
Yes.
Hang on a moment. I believe I said yes to that.
Yes.
Which student are we doing? Student D? Okay, student D, yes.
I think we're
We need a motion for student E.
I move that we expel student E from Montgomery County Public Schools.
Second.
Roll call, please.
I'm not sure if we're okay. So it's different than the ones that are on here.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Use your sheet.
Yeah, it's,
Okay. Yeah. No.
You're using the sheet? Or
Yeah. See that
Oh.
I'm totally okay. So
I'm going by the agenda.
yeah, me too. It's different. So that was kind of okay. So we're on student E by the sheet.
Yes.
Or student D on your online packet.
Right.
Okay.
I didn't realize that Judy's names in the two.
Okay, so student D on your, student D has already been, okay,
I need to rename them online. Online is wrong.
right,
Yes,
Right.
online is wrong. They have to be renamed, so they're one letter behind.
okay, well then that will change things, because,
Really, we're on student E on your paper.
You said E?
it can't be. Right, all right, so 1, 2, or A, B, C, D. All right, well then,
Right now.
that's, okay, so E is D on here, is that what you're saying? Okay, okay, I move that we long-term suspend.
No.
No.
You just
No.
need to say yes or no.
just vote.
Okay, for D.
E.
Right.
Well, on our list it's E. She's saying it's D on here.
Okay, hang on, let me just make sure who I'm,
It's the one you disagreed on.
gotcha. Okay, no.
Ms. Foster?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Ms. Cooley?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Motion carries.
And this is the last motion, I believe F, student F,
Okay, so which one?
the last.
Just so I can make sure I'm doing the right one. Okay, so long-term, 3 to 6 weeks. Okay, I move that we long-term suspend student F through the next 6 weeks.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Foster?
No.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Ms. Cooley?
No.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And I believe that concludes all the motions out of closed session. Thank you, board members. Sorry for the confusion. We will get that addressed at the next meeting.
I'm like going through here.
Next item on our agenda is to continue with the reorganization of the school board, and we have a number of things that we need to accomplish this evening. And I ask, first of all, I appreciate the members of the audience for their patience and our length in closed session this evening, and we'll move through. Next one is the election of the vice chair. As we continue to reorganize the school board, we must elect a vice chair. As with the election of the school board chair, anyone on the board may nominate another board member. A nomination does not require a second. Once the nominations are complete, I will ask for a motion to close nominations. This motion must be seconded and voted by board members. We will then vote on each nominee in the order of their nominations. Do I have a nomination for vice chair of Montgomery County School Board?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Jamie Bond.
We have one nomination of Jamie Bond. Are there any other nominations for vice chair of Montgomery County School Board?
I'd like to nominate Joe Ivers.
We have a nomination for Joe Ivers. Are there any other nominations for vice chair of Montgomery County School Board? May I have a motion to close the nominations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And for those purposes, all those in favor of the nomination, please raise your hand and say aye. Close the nominations.
Aye.
Aye. Nominations have now been closed. We did not have any opposed to the nomination. We will now vote on the nominees. Our first nominee was Ms. Bond. All those in favor of Ms. Bond for vice chair of the Montgomery County School Board, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All those, how many did we have there? And all those, and those who say in favor, please raise and say aye. All those opposed, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Nominations require a majority vote, and at least 4 members must vote in favor of vice chair for the vice chair to pass. We do not have a majority vote. If the first nominee is not approved by majority vote, the ayes have it, and is not elected. So now we need to move to Mr. Ivers. All those in favor for Mr. Ivers for vice chair of Montgomery County School Board, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Nominations require a majority vote of at least 4 board members to vote in favor of the vice chair and for the vice chair. And at this time, we do not have a majority vote. We have a tie between Mr. Ivers, and Ms. Bond. And at this point,
So we have to campaign now?
Go ahead.
Put up signs?
I'm the chair. I can't do either or anything. It's you. But, I mean, we've got a tie vote, folks. We need a vice chair.
Can there be discussion at this
Yeah.
time? Okay. I nominated Joe Ivers because I have been pleased with his service as vice chair the past year that I've been on and sitting in the audience before the year, and his amazing involvement in Montgomery County schools and out in the community. You will see him everywhere at many events, and also serving on 2 different committees to do with the board, the foundation. He's helped that really come off the ground, and also with the governor's school. So that's.
I'll tell you what, I'll just make this easy. Joe, you have done a great job. And the only reason, as I shared with you, that I was going to do it this year is because this is my election year and I have decided to run again. So I will save my campaigning to get reelected, and I will renege. Okay?
So,
There's no sense in us, because it's just going to stay here. So I call for the vote again, if you would like.
okay. So you're withdrawing your nomination as
Yes,
vice chair?
I'll withdraw.
Okay. Ms. Bond has withdrew her nomination as vice chair. And so then, let's see, procedurally, do we need to go through the whole process again?
Yep.
I think we need to start over again. So, I will, bear with me as I flip back to my notes here. Starting over again, do I have a nomination for vice chair of Montgomery County School Board?
I would like to nominate Joe Ivers for vice chair of the school board.
Okay, we have a nomination for Joe Ivers as vice chair of the school board. Do we have any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, I need a motion to close the nominations that are on the floor.
So
I
moved.
move.
Okay?
Second.
Motion's in, and we have a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Nominations have now been closed. We will now vote for the nominees. The first nominee was Mr. Ivers. All those in favor of Mr. Ivers as vice chair of the Montgomery County School Board, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed, place your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I believe that that requires a majority vote, and at this time, we achieved the majority vote, and Mr. Ivers is now the nominee is approved by majority vote, ayes have it, and Mr. Ivers is elected chair of the Montgomery County School Board for 2013.
About vice.
Vice chair.
Vice chair, I'm sorry. Appointment of the school board clerk and deputy clerk. I need a motion to appoint Brenda Drake as the clerk of the board.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand and state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Brenda Drake is now appointed the clerk of Montgomery County School Board for 2013. I need a motion to appoint Lisa Radford and Brenda Blackburn as deputy clerks.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Lisa Radford and Brenda Blackburn are appointed deputy clerks of the school board for 2013. Adoption of resolution affirming the officers of Montgomery County School Board. I need a motion to adopt the resolution that our officers, Wendell Jones for board chair, Joe Ivers for vice chair, Brenda Drake as clerk, Lisa Radford as deputy clerk, and Brenda Blackburn as deputy clerk. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second. And a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
You're going to abstain, okay. One opposed and one abstain. And the motion carries. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Yes. That's all right. Board of committee appointments. Historically, the board chair has made appointments or sought volunteers for other committees and boards. Committees and boards include one member as a liaison to the Board of Supervisors, 2 members on the Insurance Committee, 1 member on the Planning Commission, 1 voting delegate to VSBA, 1 alternate to VSBA, 1 NSBA delegate, 2 members on the Social Justice and Diversity Committee, 1 member for Southwest Virginia Governor's School, and 2 members for the Montgomery County Public School Foundation. Do I have any volunteers or nominations for these appointments? Let me review last year's appointments. The liaison to the Board of Supervisors, Wendell Jones. Insurance Committee, Penny Franklin and Dreama Foster. Planning Commission, Jamie Bond. Voting delegate to VSBA, Wendell Jones. Alternate to VSBA, Penny Franklin. NSBA delegate, Joe Ivers. Social Justice and Diversity Committee, Penny Franklin and Joe Ivers. Southwest Virginia Governor's School, Joe Ivers. Montgomery County Public School Educational Foundation, Joe Ivers and Sarah Woosley.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
would like to serve in the same capacity, insurance, social justice, and we still need to clean up the name for that committee, and alternate to VSBA.
Okay, so you would still, again, like to serve in your role that you served on last year? Paige?
Yes.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
I would like to continue serving as National School Board Association delegate. And I agree with the Social Justice and Diversity Committee also,
okay,
Southwest Virginia Governor's School also.
okay.
Now, the foundation, it's my understanding that we should have 2 or 1 school board representatives on that.
Last year was the first year that the board had 2 representatives. Before that, the board only had 1 rep. So it's completely up to the board.
And didn't we discuss the fact that there should only be 1 on there? Wasn't that discussion?
I know,
And during a committee meeting, there was discussion about the number of board members
Right.
on the committee.
Right.
And I don't recall the discussion details, but I do believe there appeared to be a consensus from the group in attendance that it would be preferable to have 1 board member, but it still remains the decision of this board.
Well, let me put it this way then. I think Sarah Woosley will probably still be on that committee. And I, for lack of a better word, a liaison
Going to be a committee member of,
or committee member. But I should no longer be a board member of the foundation.
So you're
so,
saying you do not want to represent Montgomery County Public Schools as a board member on this foundation?
You put it so harshly. yes.
Well,
well, I'm just a little confused.
I'm trying to eliminate the confusion, but I didn't mean to be so blunt, but.
No,
what we've done as a committee, if you want to call it, or the foundation board, what it's called now, is we've spent the last year really developing the board and defining its structure, and that board has really felt like 1 school board member should be on it. So in the future, it'll be, maybe this should be changed to say 1.
okay. But it just says here, Education Foundation. It doesn't say whether you're going to be a board member or whether you're just going to be a member. So what I'm hearing is you all have been serving as board members, and so we need to
point.
change this.
Well, maybe we don't. That's a good point. Maybe we both need to represent the foundation, and we'll internally work as 1 board member and 1 committee member or liaison, which
Okay.
won't make a difference. You're absolutely right. What we have here can stay.
But does it need to be split out as 1 board member and 1 committee
Yeah,
member?
if it's going to be an
Yes.
assignment,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
There you
The
go.
committee assignment.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, okay.
So we need to add board member
right.
and
committee.
committee member.
Sound right?
Yeah. Because that one, I guess, is different in that it is called a foundation board as opposed to these others are called committees.
And we've had, like the Christiansburg Institute Board assignment, and then that dropped off, but you were assigned to the board, not just as a committee person.
Okay.
So who is, for clarification purposes, do we need to differentiate between who is committee and who is board here? So,
I'm committee, Sarah's board.
okay, so Joe is committee and Sarah is board. Okay,
And the clarification of that is I've been president of the board now for 3 years, and my term is expired. So as I move out, someone else becomes president, and then I would move on to a committee, and then she would stay on the board.
And I would, of course, liaison to the Board of Supervisors, continue in that role, and voting delegate to VSB, that is perfectly fine for me. Ms. Foster, any changes or any issues there with
Nope, I
your
love being
assignment?
on the insurance committee. I think it's a great opportunity to interact with staff, so I
Okay.
like that assignment.
All right, and Jamie,
I can stay on the same, but I'll just be honest, I don't always get to attend the meetings every month, so if there's someone who thinks they can do a better job, I'd be more than happy to switch out, but, you know, having a business in town, I do get to kind of stay up on things even if I don't get to go to the meeting, so it's just whatever the board prefers. It's just sometimes not enough hours in the day. I wish there were, but there's not. And they meet like twice a month, just like we do, so it's just kind of impossible for me. But if you guys are happy with what I can do, I'll be glad to continue.
you're doing a fine job in my
Thank you very
So
much. I
happy.
appreciate that,
So
sir.
happy. So
I'll
happy.
stay where I'm at.
And I believe that concludes all the committee assignments. Adoption of the resolution appointing agent and deputy agent for signing claims. I need a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the superintendent and, in her absence, the assistant superintendent to serve as the agent and deputy agent for signing claims.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Appointment of superintendent designees. I need a motion to appoint the superintendent designees to sign on behalf of the superintendent when she is out of the office. In the past, the designees have been the assistant superintendent as the primary designee, and in his absence, the director of secondary education as the secondary superintendent designee. Director of elementary education, I'm sorry if I said.
Does that need a motion?
Yes,
So
I'm
moved.
pausing for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Schedule meeting dates, times, and locations. Our next item is to set the meeting dates, times, and locations for the year. In 2012, our meetings were held at 7:30 on the first and third Tuesdays of the month and were located at the County Government Center in Christiansburg. Need a motion to continue.
So
that.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of our hiring practices resolution. Do I have a motion to adopt the hiring practices resolution approved by the board in 1992 and adopted annually since that time?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your right hand and stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of board procedures, code of ethics, and standards of conduct. Annually, the school board revisits the board procedures, standards of conduct, and code of ethics, as noted in policy 1-1.6. Do I have a motion to reaffirm this policy?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand, stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Appointment of the Blue Ridge ETV representative. Annually, the board appoints a person to serve as the Blue Ridge Educational Television representative for Montgomery County Public Schools. In 2012, the supervisor of social science and character education served in this role. Do I have a motion for the Blue Ridge Education Television representative?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Reaffirmation of our mission, vision, and priority objectives. Whew. I need a motion to approve the mission statement, vision statement, and priority objectives for the school division.
So move.
Second.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Yes. The mission statement stated here is not our mission statement. And the visions don't seem to be in consonant with the visions. It's goals that I think were set back in 2002 or 2008. Anyway, this is dated 2005. The mission statement here is not the mission statement that we have.
Are you referring, Mr. Ivers, to preparing students? Or to a completely different mission statement?
I can't hear you.
Are you referring just to the slogan, the motto?
I'm looking at the mission, vision, and priority goals, and I'm assuming that's of the school system?
Right, that's policy that was adopted by the school board.
Right.
You click on the link.
They come directly from the continuous improvement plan that was approved when you all went through the 10-year Sachs-Casey Advanced Ed full district accreditation, and since that time you've done some other work through our retreats
Right.
and so forth. But until we revise that comprehensive plan, these would stand as the mission and vision from that comprehensive plan that you did for that district accreditation.
Okay, you see, I think you all see the mission statement there. And I believe you all recall, because most of us were involved in making the new mission statement. The mission of Montgomery County Public Schools is to be a community of excellence that develops each student's full potential to be a lifelong learner and a productive global citizen. So you're saying that this is a moot point until,
It was work that you did in the retreat, yes,
Right.
but it does not replace this statement that was developed when you developed your comprehensive plan for the district.
And what I would suggest, I mean, we could.
You can amend it,
yes,
but we need to amend it in the comprehensive plan and here as you adopt it.
My thinking would be to reaffirm what we have in policy, and then under new business at one of our next meetings is to bring this up, to update this policy to what you
Excellent.
have there.
thank you.
Okay, that would be my suggestion. And do this, we have to do the action under new business and then
Sure.
have it brought by policy and updated by administration. Okay? So, with that said, we have a motion and a second in discussion. All those in favor for reaffirmation of the mission, vision, and priorities in accordance with 1-1.5, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Did you get that? Okay. The motion carries. Reaffirmation of the school board protocols. The school board initially affirmed protocols in 1998. Do I have a motion to reaffirm these protocols?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your right hand and stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of a resolution authorizing the superintendent to settle claims against the school board. I need a motion to approve a resolution granting authority to the division superintendent to authorize settlement of claims against the school board.
Did
Need a mo-
you skip code of ethics?
Yeah.
Code of ethics.
No, I'm going by my script here.
Code of ethics is 1.1.
Yeah, I thought we had done that.
Yeah.
Oh, we had?
It was just on here twice.
Yeah, you.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
bear with me.
and that is, because I don't think I have that.
You're like me. So I had to, let me restate.
Don't do that as an attachment here.
Adoption of resolution authorizing the superintendent to settle claims against the school board. I need a motion to approve the resolution granting authority to the division superintendent to authorize settlement of claims against the school board. Need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Does,
Discussion?
yes, does that not have a monetary amount attached to it? Because I don't have it.
It's 5,000 for an individual claim and 10,000 for each fiscal year.
Yeah, it's in the resolution, yeah. So, yes, it does.
Would you like us to remove?
Do you see that? You okay?
No, I mean, I'm okay with it, but I just don't see it. Maybe I'm not looking in the right
Under
place.
public comment, resolution, attachment is it there?
Public comment?
Public content in the agenda.
I'm good.
We'll show you later.
Yeah. I mean, as long as I know what those amounts are, I'm okay.
Here.
5 and 10.
All those in favor signify by raising your right hand and stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Announcement regarding the availability of the policy manual. The Montgomery County Public School Policy Manual is available on the Montgomery County Public website at http://www.mcps.org. Printed copies are available to citizens as needed by contacting the board clerk. And I believe that at this time concludes all of our reorganization.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is public address, and this is where the board sets aside 30 minutes to allow citizens to address the board on items of educational interest. The board allows 3 minutes per citizen to address the board, and at this time, I have nobody signed up in advance to address the board. Therefore, I'll open it up to those in the audience. If anyone would like to address the board at this time, if so, please step forward and state your name and address. Seeing no one, public address is now closed. Next item on our agenda is consent items. We have items approval for consent. Does anybody want to pull anything under consent items and discuss? Hearing none, items are approved on consent. Next item on our agenda is the personnel report. You have a personnel report before you. I need a motion to approve the personnel report.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the personnel report? All those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Aye. Personnel report is approved. Payment of the bills. We need a motion to pay the bills.
So moved.
Need a second.
Second.
Any discussion on the bills? All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We also have the financial summary. Need a motion to approve the financial summary report.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Phew. We're now to the superintendent's reports, recommendations, and announcements.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We have 3 grants this evening for the board's consideration. The first one is called Algebra Apps, Student Tested, Teacher Approved. Virginia Tech has requested $256,017 from the Virginia Department of Education's Math and Science Partnership Grant Program for this 18-month project. The project will partner our algebra teachers with Virginia Tech researchers to design and test iPad apps that address algebra SOL skills. MCPS will encourage participation of all algebra teachers in summer workshops and ongoing activities Participants will receive stipends, iPads, and Apple TV devices. Recommend approval of this grant.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
The next grant is Water Sustainability Education in Public Schools using a web-enabled real-time water and weather monitoring system. And this grant is also through a partnership with Virginia Tech Weather Monitoring Systems, and proposes to incorporate water sustainability concepts into our ecology and environmental science curriculum. 2 teachers will receive training in water quality monitoring and will in turn train other teachers. Virginia Tech has requested $216,000 from the Environmental Protection Agency for this 2-year project. Benefits will include professional development, teacher stipends, materials, and supplies. Recommend approval of this grant application.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
This is really a cool grant. I'd like to see, I can hardly wait to see what the outcome is.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Grant is approved.
The third grant that I have for you this evening is the water grant. So let me make it open up.
Anchoring.
That was, just did the water.
There we go, I got it. Is I think I copied the wrong thing. The third grant is a grant in conjunction again with Virginia Tech, and involves Prices Fork Elementary School and 2 other school districts, as well as 3 other universities. As part of the project, 2 Prices Fork Elementary School 4th and 5th grade teachers will work with project researchers to collaboratively develop curriculum and instruction materials. This is a grant that's been proposed to the National Science Foundation Discovery Research K-12 and could amount to as much as $1,131,000 over a term of 3 years. I recommend approval of Montgomery County's participation in this grant.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Any opposed? Grant is approved.
The next item is legislative priorities for the board's consideration for 2013, and each year the board identifies priorities to share with the legislative delegation. I would also add that this year a number of the members of the school board, as well as myself and several staff members, have met individually with delegates and collectively to discuss the concerns that we see ourselves facing, not only in Montgomery County, but for public education in Virginia. The attached list represents the priorities that have been identified by the board through your discussion in your meetings, through your attendance at professional meetings, and through a review of the positions taken both by the state organizations for superintendents and the state organizations for school board members. This listing is presented for the board's approval for distribution to our local delegation, and I would also encourage that if it does meet your needs, that it might possibly be moved to action so that we could go ahead and put it in the hands of our delegates. As you know, the legislative session actually opens tomorrow.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion on the legislative priorities.
Are you saying that this can come to a vote tonight and it can get, okay. We've been working on this for quite a while, and I think it's due. It spells out pretty much what we've been talking about. And it certainly spells out not only local issues, but state and national issues.
Any other comments? We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor signify by Any opposed to the Hearing none, your legislative priorities have been approved.
Question. Might need to ask it later, but I'm gonna ask it now. When is the legislative session for board members? Not session, but lobby day?
I don't have that at my fingertips, but I'll be happy to send that out to you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
So you've authorized by your vote for me to go ahead and provide this then to our legislative delegation. Thank you very
And
much.
I guess I'm just going to clean it up and put it on our stationery, and I'd also like to see it announced. I'd like to see it announced and put on the website too as well.
Okay.
I'm sure it will. Just wanted to make sure.
Be glad to do that.
Thank you.
Good idea.
Thank you.
So our next item is a presentation on the 2013-2014 governor's budget proposal. The school board will receive an overview of major items that will impact budget planning, and Katie Miano is going to do that presentation this evening. This presentation will begin a process that will continue this coming Monday evening when we do a workshop on the budget. And a little bit later on, we'll be talking also about perhaps scheduling a special hearing or a special meeting for a public hearing on this budget proposal. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Miano. Katie. Oh, well, it's just,
Downloaded on the computer,
okay.
so we're gonna pull it down right now.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to talk about the budget a little bit tonight, as Mrs. Blackburn mentioned. Here's a...
Mic closer down there.
Better?
Yeah.
Here's a just brief overview of what we're going to talk about. On this slide, a couple of things I wanted to point out to you are the big deficit, and this shows a 5-year comparison that we've gone down, that we've decreased our budget by almost $5.5 million. In that top section, in the bottom section, you'll see where a lot of this has taken place, where the state has decreased the revenue that we've received by $7 million, and the county has increased the revenue that they've given us by $4.4 million. This slide is in here, the budget expenditures, just to reiterate how much of our budget is for salaries and fringes, 88.4% in our current 12-13 budget. These next two slides just show some detail of what makes up the 88% and then the other two percentages. The one thing I'd like to point out on this slide is the state revenue from from the beginning, 02-03 to 08-09. You'll notice that there's a very steady increase. From 08-09 to 12-13, what we're currently in, it's a very dramatic drop. That's the one I mentioned earlier, the $7 million. This slide, you'll notice that our average daily membership is having a slow, steady increase from the 08-09 fiscal year when it was 95.18, and we were projecting our March 31st ADM to be 9.552. The governor's proposed budget had some of the stuff he always has, the technical updates for enrollment, SOQ, categorical, and incentive accounts. He's also proposed no increase in the VRS contribution rate, no increase in the retiree health insurance credit rate, and no increase in the group life insurance rate. He has also proposed adding a 2% salary increase for all funded SOQ instructional positions, and you'll see that that's approximately 47, almost 48% of our total FTEs. This slide, the one thing I'd really like to point out is that the compensation supplement that the governor's proposed is $490,000. And then you'll notice on our next slide, the total revenue that we're expecting to increase from the state is $116,000. And the $490,000 makes up the majority of that. Oh, and I'd also like to mention on that $490,000 that will cover approximately 30% of the total cost of a 2% raise for across the board for everybody. And then my last slide is just reminding you.
Say that again, please. Where are you now? The last statement?
I'm sorry,
The last statement you just made?
that the $490,000 will cover approximately 30% of the total cost of a 2% raise across the board for everybody.
In other words, it's going to take about $1.3 million more to be able to give an equivalent 2% to every employee in the division. So although the governor has funded a select group of our employees, he's left the board with the decision about what are you going to do about the rest of the people in the school district. And the price tag is quite large to cover the remaining.
So that 490,000 is the 700?
It's the 700 FTE.
Oh, FTEs, yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
yes.
Kind of like another unfunded
This is
No,
actually
he
incentive
mandated.
funds. It's incentive funds. So we have to match this. It's part of the,
Or you don't get the money.
or you don't get the money, correct?
You have to
Correct.
match it or you don't get the money.
Correct.
The 2% that that 400,000 for the 2% raise for the SOQ or SQO position, SOQ positions, we have to match that?
If you don't match it, then you don't get that $490,000.
And with matching that, does it have to go to salaries, or we have to match that to go somewhere else in the budget? I'm not clear with that.
It is like the composite index. I'll let Walt address it, but basically, it goes into the salaries.
Yeah, it's incentive funds, and so you have to give a 2% salary increase to all SOQ instructional positions that are recognized here, and that's teachers, principals, assistant principals, library guidance that are in the instructional SOQ positions. And so you have to then certify that you've given a 2% raise to that group of individuals. Our local match is, requirement is that we've got to provide enough money in our budget to cover our matching requirement.
Right, which would be only a portion of our employees.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Instructional FTE positions only cover about 47% of our total employees. That's the 705 employees. And then you take those employees and you index it. So 60% of the funding comes from the state, 40% is a local match. And when you add it up, that's, as Katie said, only about 30% of your total cost is represented by the instructional position indexed amount, yes.
I understand that.
Yeah. Your other groups, all your admin assistants in the schools are not included, all your custodians, all your maintenance,
Right.
all your support. So if you follow the governor's philosophy, I guess teachers are supposed to clean their own rooms, maintain their own rooms and buildings, and provide all the transportation and everything for students. But
Thank you, I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the point I was trying to make. Yes.
I just had one slide left. Oops. The last slide I had was just a reminder of the initial budget request on February 5th, with it being due to, being requested forwarded to the county administrator for the board's approval, board of supervisors approval by February 8th. And that was all.
Thank you, Katie. I'm just sorry there's not more money in that,
Me too.
in those slides that you just shared with us. So I'd like to thank Katie for providing us with the most current information about the governor's budget proposal. And as I mentioned earlier, the General Assembly actually convenes tomorrow. And over the next 6 weeks, they're going to deliberate many issues and ultimately will approve a budget sometime before adjourning on February 23rd. I'm going to take the opportunity to make just a few comments about the budget to really set the stage for the conversations that we'll have on Monday evening when we do our special workshop. First of all, I must say that I'm not encouraged by the governor's budget. And although there is a net increase of about $615,000 for Montgomery County Schools over the funding that we have this school year, a major portion of it is earmarked for salary enhancement for a very specific group of employees. And although compensation is certainly one of my priorities, and it's one of the priorities that I've heard from each board member, the governor's budget is $1.3 million short of addressing what it would take for us to give 2.2% to every employee in Montgomery County Public Schools. And as you know, we have some other funding issues that we're facing for 2013, 2014, and I want to just touch base with you about some of the ones we've talked about before. First of all, there's the ongoing problem of dealing with the additional 4% VRS transfer, and it has a value of $553,000. And I think it's very important because without doing it, our salary schedules don't look competitive at all with our neighboring counties. And 65% of the school divisions in the state of Florida have done the whole 5%, whereas we've done only 1%. We have, as you know, the potential for opening up 2 new high schools in the summer of 2013, and it's going to cost us more to run those high schools than it does the much smaller existing school buildings, and so we have to budget $224,000 more to run these new buildings. We also, last year, as a budget cut, we reduced 2 vacant maintenance positions that had a value of $98,000. And when we reduced them, we knew it was a 1-year-only reduction because they're basically the major systems maintenance people in the 2 new high schools. And our comprehensive large high schools have always had a dedicated maintenance person to maintain those very complex systems, and we need to restore those and place one at Auburn High School and one at Blacksburg High School. We need to fill the gap caused by the pay-to-play. I filled it this year from other funds, and we need to fill it again in the 2013-2014 school year. Health insurance costs have gone up every year, and we won't get our first estimate from our provider until probably mid to late February, but it could go up by as much as $230,000 for the board to continue what you do now with employee insurance coverage, which is basically covering the cost of the entire single person subscriber premium. You'll also recall that last year the county and Board of Supervisors gave us $750,000 in one-time money, and that one-time money primarily went to capital expenditures, and they were things like the 5-year roofing plan, additional funds for technology to continue to implement the 21st Century Classroom Project, and the purchase of 4 buses. And we have to, again, for 2013, 2014, look at how we're going to fund those expenses, because they're not going to go away just because the money was one-time money. And we have other needs that are still under review. And we all followed the fiscal cliff, and although some decisions were made, some decisions were deferred. And the issue that was very pressing for us, which was sequestration, is still hanging out there as unresolved and probably won't be taken up by the feds until March. And so there's a potential shortfall in federal funds of just over $400,000 that we might also be facing. So to be very honest with you, I foresee a deficit of somewhere between $3 and $4 million at a minimum between available revenue and the needs of the school division. Based on my conversations with you over the last few days, I believe that I have heard that it is your desire for me to again present a needs-based budget to the Board of Supervisors for consideration for funding. And I will pursue that direction. But at the same time, on Monday evening, I will provide you what I consider my priority areas for budget reductions should the gap not be filled either by the Board of Supervisors or by the state legislature between what we have needs for and what we actually have in revenue. I believe that funding the items that I've just listed in the list above, they're critical. And I also believe that salary improvements for all employees and funding the full 4% VRS are also critical to the future of this school system. I don't think we can make any further reductions in our programs or supplies and materials. Doing so would not be in the best interest of our students and our teachers in this school system. In fact, I believe that we need to restore some funding to materials and supplies. Just like you are seeing inflation in the prices that you pay in the retail arena, our schools are seeing the same increase in prices, and yet they have about 45% of the budget that they had 4 years ago for materials and supplies. So barring some major increase in revenue, which I haven't seen anything about yet, but I keep looking for, I think we're going to be faced with some very, very difficult questions and the necessity of potentially doing things in this organization in some very different ways. You can only stretch the dollar so far, and you can only spend the dollar one time. When it's spent, it's spent. And we look at 2013-14 as the 5th straight year of serious budget issues for this school system. In a related matter, I need some direction from the board about how you want to handle the public hearings for the budget this year. You'll recall that last year there was a lot of discussion among the board members that you didn't want to have the public hearing on the same night that you voted on the budget. And so if that is the case, then we have preliminarily built in the potential for you to have a public hearing on your budget on January 29th, which would be the 5th Tuesday in the month. We can certainly change that, but for the purpose of discussion this evening, if that's still the desire of the board, I wanted to put that date out there. I would also like to just restate that Montgomery County Public Schools holds 2 public hearings on the budget when you're actually only required to hold 1. The first one you hold is the one that we have been holding about the needs-based budget. And usually that is the larger budget request that goes early in the budget cycle to the Board of Supervisors. And this year we've been asked to present to the county by February 8th our budget request. As you know, it's very hard to make a budget request when the legislature is still in session and you have no idea how much money you have. But that's the timeline that we deal with, and that also figures into this needs-based budget versus a budget that's actually based on known revenue. You do have the option of not holding the second hearing, but the second hearing is the point at which you are basically making decisions that fill the gap between your now known revenue in the April-May timeframe and your budget decisions. So I just leave that on the table for your consideration. It is not a requirement, but it is something that this board has been doing. So again, I would reiterate that This is another challenging budget year that does not provide adequate funding for the things we need to do to keep our school system moving forward, or for that matter, even to maintain the status quo in light of the many demands that we have to address. And if you think back to the list that I went through about things that need funding, they're not really permissive kind of items. You have new school buildings, you have to have operating funds, you have to have the personnel to operate the very sophisticated systems that you find in these new school buildings. And you also have a situation in which you've been offered an opportunity to provide salary enhancement to 700 employees, but you haven't been given any money to provide salary enhancements to the remainder of your workforce. And you have the VRS issue hanging out there. So again, it's going to be a challenging budget year, and I felt that was only fair tonight to put out there in front of the board some of the things that my staff and I are considering very closely as we prepare to bring you a superintendent's recommendation for a budget on Monday evening, and take your input so that we can bring back to you on the 22nd, hopefully, a budget that you would approve to advertise for public hearing. With that, I would open it to comments that you may have or questions that you may have for Katie, and discussion, of course, about the January 29th potential date for a public hearing.
I have a question. On the calendar, it has meetings on January 12th and 17th, school board budget workshops. Can you tell me what those are?
It might have been the time frame. I need to look back. The budget workshop, we scheduled the date as Monday, the 14th for your workshop. Let me look at the budget.
It's the last slide on that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
I'll fix that.
And, you know, the January 29th recommendation is based on your desire last year not to do the public hearing and the vote on the same night, so that's
So
also your option.
So what you're saying is the public hearing would be the 22nd, and then we would do one of two things, have a second public hearing on the 29th, and then adopt the budget?
No, the way it's laid out, on the 14th, I would give you my recommendations for our budget for 2013-14, and you would have an opportunity to give me feedback.
Right.
On the 22nd, I would bring you a budget that you would be asked to approve to advertise for a public hearing.
Right.
And the public hearing then would be scheduled on Tuesday, January 29th.
Okay.
You would take public input, and then you would come back on February the 8th and actually vote to
Okay.
approve a budget.
Okay, so approve initial budget on the 5th,
Right.
and then on the 8th.
Yes, the 5th is the date, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, I got it. And the 8th is when it's
And the 8th,
due.
it goes to the county.
Yes, goes to the county on the 8th, I'm sorry.
That's the date they've asked for.
Yes, it is.
Board members, comments, questions? Right now, I think on just the calendar and the dates.
Well, I like the idea of having a hearing separate than when we take the vote, so I do like that additional meeting in there. And I'm okay with the date.
Me
So
too.
you're saying the 14th, the 22nd, and 29th are okay?
The 14th, we've already approved,
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
so just the 29th is what's in question.
I agree. So on Monday, we're not in this room. It's-
No, and Monday, we're going to be across the hall.
So the 22nd would just be a public hearing.
No, the 22nd is a regular school board meeting, and one of your agenda items would be to approve a budget to advertise for a public hearing on the 29th.
Okay. Is it appropriate to make a motion to approve that meeting now?
On the 29th,
Right.
I would wait and do it under new business.
Okay.
Okay.
And discussing the budget calendar, there is no way to have the approved budget earlier than the May 7th because of the state. And they're,
Pretty much.
that's just the way it is, right?
I'd have to look at the exactly when we know how much money we have. You know, last year, the legislature didn't adjourn on time. I'm certainly not expecting that to happen this time because it's a short session, but you have to go back and reconstruct and
Well,
develop it.
The General Assembly will finish toward the end of February with their session, but then you have the county does not set the tax rate until usually April. And after they complete their, set their tax rate and set the county budget, then you know the funding you have from the state, the funding you have from the county, and then you have to make your adjustments. So normally it's the first part of May before you have a, at the earliest, to be able to do that. It's been as late as June in the past where we've got it. If you do it the first part of May, that allows enough time for the staff then to get your contracts together in teachers' hands and everything before the end of school. And you also have to keep in mind this year, we have the potential of an earlier ending because we set the calendar so early to give us the maximum time in the summer. So you probably don't want to go much later than that first part of May to approve the
Well, I
budget.
was wanting to go earlier than May, but I
That's
guess
all,
you can.
you'll still have to, do work in April, for that, but there's always a possibility if things fall in place, second meeting in April, you could do something.
Any other comments, questions about the budget? I think we're set on our dates. Everybody understand what the next steps are? Okay.
Okay, the next item is calendar planning. As you know, it's calendar time again. How could it get here so quick? That's all I know. This year, I'm going to make some recommendations that are a bit of a departure from what we've done in past practice. And the first is requesting that the board consider adopting a standard that does not have students starting to school prior to Wednesday, September 4th. And the second request is that the creation of the calendar committee be set with membership that provides equitable representation to the various stakeholders rather than just the universal open membership committee. The reason for the recommendation of the September 4 date for potentially starting school for students is that we don't have substantial completion of all buildings at Blacksburg High School until August the 15th. It's an extremely tight time frame to get everybody moved. The reason I'm requesting that we take a look at the calendar committee is that because we have an unusual standard that's being proposed, it appears to be appropriate that we try to have all groups represented equitably across all areas of the county. And currently, we just put up a notice that says we're having a calendar committee, come one and come all, and so you don't end up with, level representation. You might end up with a preponderance of secondary teachers or a preponderance of people from one area of the county or another, and so I think it's a great time to try to make that a committee that's very representative of all the stakeholders in the process. By suggesting September 4th as the start date, I'm not saying anything about the completion schedule of the building. We are currently on time. We're currently on budget. I remain very, very optimistic and am planning in the direction, as you saw from your board update items, for us to move Blacksburg Middle School to Blacksburg and for us to open both high schools with students starting on Wednesday, September 4th. It remains very aggressive because of the short time frame between the final completion date of all the BHS buildings. My feeling was that it was preferable to come and try to set a reasonable start date for school now rather than potentially be looking at revisiting and changing the start date for school in mid-July or sometime during the summer. So with those opening statements, I'm going to ask Mark if he would come forward and speak briefly about what the standards are that we're asking you to approve, the format, and then what the committee would look like if the board so chooses to do, accept my recommendations.
Good evening. As Ms. Blackburn had mentioned, the difference this year is the layout of the information we're presenting. It's broken down into two parts as it's identified in your board packet. The first portion are the standards. Those are those pieces that are required to be in the makeup of the calendar itself, and the primary change in the listing of standards on your sheet is that last point. And that last point to emphasize is that the starting date for students will be no earlier than the Wednesday following Labor Day. The second part of that is the format. The format are those pieces that the board has asked be included in the calendar for the ease of the audiences, whether that's the parents, the staff, or the students themselves, and the information we share. Now, Ms. Blackburn has already gone over the post-Labor Day starting school date recommendation from the administration. I won't belabor that point, but I do want to talk a little bit more about the reconfiguration of the calendar committee. And the intentions are to reach out to the four strands to have, as Ms. Blackburn stated, an equitable representation from each strand. We'll put out a notice to all schools to include the parents and the community at large through the PTAs and our schools, soliciting response from them and their interest. Another part is beyond the representation from each strand, from principals, teachers, elementary, secondary, block, traditional, support staff, and parents or community members. The meetings will also be open to the public for folks to observe. Now, those that are on the committee will be those engaged in the discussion, but we also want to be as open as transparent as well as informative to the community at large. And so as you see on your sheet, the information is presented to you for both information purposes and or action. Once we receive the approval from the board for this approach, or as you deem appropriate, then we will go forward and put the calendar committee into place. I'll pause to see if there are any questions or comments.
Board members?
If they didn't start back till after September 4th, whichever the Wednesday, when would they get out?
Now, we, of course, would have to still factor in the possible breaks and all, but tentatively speaking, and I'm going to stress the word tentatively speaking, including the 6 inclement weather days, so we could possibly subtract those, June 20th.
That's post-planning, not the last day for students, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. It's the last day for employees.
What about for students?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. The last day for students was the 20th. The last day for the employees would be the following Monday and Tuesday, which would be the 23rd or 24th. Now again, depending on the inclement weather, and no one can predict that, if we took off those 6 days, the last day of school would actually be June 12th.
So there's a possibility that the students would start school September 4th, give or take a day, get out June 17th, give or take a day, and then the next year possibly start in August again?
To be determined by the
Yeah,
board and your
yeah,
guidelines,
yeah,
but if we
yeah,
were to
yeah.
go back to the
Go
traditional
back to the,
calendars.
yeah, exactly.
Yes, sir.
That'd be a rough summer.
We've had a number of rough summers,
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
as
You're
I
absolutely right.
recall.
You're absolutely right.
We've had a lot of discussion around this calendar in the last couple of years, and I was not so keen about starting as early as we did this year, but then came around understanding that we have got to, move folks into buildings, and because of the weather last year, we got out earlier, so that wasn't that big of a hardship as far as how long folks were off for the summer. I've always had a concern when it came to bringing these buildings online, or how we went about, resolutions to the roof collapse and when school would start and end. I don't feel that it is fair to hold the whole county in or out of school because we may have one or two buildings who may not be able to open up at the same time. I lived through that when Christiansburg High School opened up, and because of weather and other things, that building opened up 2 weeks later than the rest of the district. And we got through and we came out the same time as everybody else did. So I have a real problem with everybody else having to either come to school later in September and then get out almost at the end of June, possibly. I just don't know that we have to do it that way, and that there are other ways to manage that.
The only problem with that would be if you open many of the schools earlier, you're taking away personnel and who knows what else from moving schools from wherever they are now to where they're supposed to be when September 4th rolls around. I think you'd probably even stretch the maintenance crews and the facilities crews even thinner by trying to upkeep the problems you may have in many of the schools as they open, and then moving Auburn and Blacksburg.
I mean, the concerns that are being put before us now, these timelines, these dates have been out there from the very beginning. This is when the building's gonna be turned over to us, this is when we can do this is when we can do that. And instead of looking at the big picture and scheduling and planning for, 2-3 years at a time as these projects have progressed, it's, okay, we need to do this because this, and now we've got to move things back or move things up because of this, but they were all there. So it is kind of irritating that now, okay, well, we knew that this was gonna be when we were gonna get the buildings, and now let's open school later because of that. Well, we knew that last year when we did calendar planning. And last fall, when we decided to do this and do that,
We don't adopt multi-year calendars, though, and one of the reasons that we don't is because the standards are not such that you can make them fit into a multi-year process. I'd be very happy to look at a multi-year calendar approach, because if you nail down the standards closely enough, you can do that.
And we have done that. We've done 2-year calendars before.
And I would certainly be willing to do that. I guess my feeling in bringing the recommendation that I'm bringing is that we know that there's only 2 weeks between the substantial completion date and the Labor Day weekend. And I view this as a unified system, and it would be preferable from my perspective in a unified system if you can, for all children to start at the same time. I can't promise you, Ms. Franklin, that I won't be back here saying that we need to delay the start of Blacksburg High School. But I'm not hoping to do that because I'm going to put in place a creative plan that double schedules that school. And if something happens and I can't start them on the 4th in their building, then I'll have an alternative plan. But in the interest of trying to use staff time the best I can, because they're going to be doing technology and opening up schools that have been closed down for a couple of months, and they're going to be very involved in the technology for the new schools, that in fairness, I feel like I can say reasonably certain that I can open on Wednesday, September the 4th. But I'm skeptical that I can open every school on Wednesday, August the 14th, or on Wednesday, 7 days later, in the following week. And so this was my best stab at trying to give us opportunity to open Montgomery County Public Schools in a unified calendar for 2013, 2014, and that's what I brought you.
I want to make sure I understand what you're suggesting is that all the schools except for the 2 Blacksburg schools open like we normally have done in the past?
No.
No, I'm talking to Ms. Franklin.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to me.
I'm sorry. That the rest of the school divisions open in the middle of August like we traditionally have done, but the 2 Blacksburg schools would not open until they're complete and ready to be occupied?
If we run into that situation,
That doesn't sound like it would be a very efficient way to run. I mean, when we're talking about budget and trying to scrape nickels and dimes together, it sounds like that would be more costly than waiting.
and as far as the right word, either hardship, convenience, or the rest of the people in the district, our parents, employers, and whatever, who work around our schedule, you know, we've been moving it back and forth and round for the last 3 years, trying to accommodate what's going on here. And there's only 2 or 3 buildings possibly, because we don't know what could happen with Auburn, that are being affected here, and everybody else is having to readjust their lives for that. And I just don't think that that's fair, if there's another way to do it. And I've been there.
You know, the other thing that I thought about is, you know, we have families that attend multiple strands by choice. You know, we have families who transport their kids into a different area because of their work assignment. We have, so when you don't have a unified start, you create issues potentially, not for the majority of families, but for some families within our school district. And you would even in the Blacksburg area, because you would have all of the Blacksburg elementary schools ready to start and potentially not have your 2 Blacksburg secondary schools ready to start on the early start date. So families would have dilemmas with childcare and transportation and a number of other things. And again, as I said, my focus was to try to pick a date that I could reasonably expect that I could open the system in a unified way, and that's the date that I brought to the board.
Board members, any other board members' comments on the dates? Is anybody interested in seeing a staggered start schedule? And I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing a staggered start, but I would want to know what the cost impact of doing such is.
So if we leave it as it is, the August 21st would be the start date, as we've done in the past.
Approximately.
It would be the third Wednesday.
Mark can tell you, but it would
Is it
be
the-
approximately that.
Historically, we've started on that 3rd Wednesday
Is it the
in August,
21st?
which would be the 21st.
Okay.
What's
so-
being proposed is the 4th of
So
September.
it's a 2-week
Mm-hmm.
difference.
2 weeks.
Yes, ma'am.
As I mentioned to you, one of my concerns is childcare and a lot of college students going back to school before the students would go back, our students would go back to school. And, you know, I know people don't think about that a lot, but there are a lot of camps that are run by college students that a lot of our students attend. So that's going to create some dilemmas for parents there. But I understand this is a one-time thing that we may have to deal with.
Well, the other thing I didn't want to do, I didn't want to have a calendar committee start work without some direction from this board about what would be acceptable. And so if I send them to work and they come back with a calendar that starts on Wednesday, September 4th, and there's no support from the board, then they've been spinning their wheels. Or if I send them back and they, you know, come back with a calendar that starts on Wednesday, August 21st, and I can tell you right now that you won't be starting Blacksburg High School for students on Wednesday, August the 21st, because substantial completion would have only been like 6 days before that, April the 15th. And substantial completion, you can do a lot of things before you get that, but there are a few things that you can't do until you have that substantial completion certificate of occupancy to be able to put the finishing touches on it.
So this is just an agenda item, and you're not looking for approval, or what are you?
I'm looking for approval of the calendar standards that are listed here, which includes a potential start date no earlier than Wednesday, September the 4th for the school year 2013-14 only.
I move that
One-
we, I move that we accept the standards as put forth here,
And the committee, you want the committee?
And the
part?
committee.
and the committee.
Okay, so we're clear.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve the standards as presented and the calendar committee as presented. Any further discussion on that?
Yes, I have some discussion as far as the committee. So are we saying the committee would consist of 5 people?
From each
each
strand,
strand.
yes, ma'am. And anyone who's not on the committee will be invited to attend any and all of the meetings to observe the conversation and discussion.
But not to participate.
Correct.
Well,
Any further discussion?
no.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
I'm going to oppose for the moment.
So that's 4-2? Did you get that? Okay. All right. And that takes us to the calendar of activities. The next item on the agenda, you see the calendar of activities. The next item on our agenda is unfinished business by school board members. Thank you, Mr. Pazer, for your help there.
Thanks, Mark.
Unfinished business, we do have one item under unfinished business, and that is the resolution from the Board of Supervisors on school improvement related to Christiansburg High School. And wanted to receiving direction from this board on how we want to move forward with that, or do we wait, table that for our budget discussions? It's money that I understand, in speaking with Mr. Meadows and Mr. Politis, that it is money that's out there, and all we have to do is ask.
I know there's been a couple of emails back and forth, but have we made it clear to the Board of Supervisors that what our job is? And hopefully they'll understand what their job is? And, okay. Have there been discussions on that also?
Didn't seem to matter here.
I'm sorry?
I said it just didn't seem to matter here.
No, not here, you're right.
Board members, what is your preference on acting on the resolution? Do we wait till we get into our budget discussions, knowing that we have it there?
Yeah.
I'll throw my idea out related to this. We know that when we've talked about capital improvements, we've talked about that as Christiansburg Strand is one of the next ones, specifically the elementary school, and that before we can do any future planning, and that is those before we can really move with some good concrete plans and ideas, there needs to be some sort of studies conducted and planning done. And I think that, you know, to me, and that's the logical next step. If we're looking at the Christiansburg primary and elementary area, and we're looking at Christiansburg High School, based on my experience, one of the first things you look at is the land that you need, and is it feasible to build on site? Is there other pieces that you can build? So it's a kind of a feasibility study on what is currently there and what you can do with what's currently there. And the same thing at Christiansburg. Do you have enough land to be able to build there? And if not, why not, and all that. So we've got this money here. You could use that money for that purpose to get the ball started rolling in trying to commission some studies on both Christiansburg High School and the elementary schools to, you know, start looking at where we're headed and the challenges that we're going to have, because, you know, I think we are going to have a potential land issue maybe with the elementary schools and the standards that we have to build to nowadays. So I just throw that out there for.
Okay, my understanding was that with this resolution that they had earmarked that money already. So are you saying with your conversations that this money is not necessarily earmarked and that if we request, it could be moved to different areas?
That
Or
was
for other purposes?
the communication I've had with members is that if we submit a request that's different, that they will take it to their board and their board will discuss it. I mean, they've submitted resolution to us, okay? But my position is, okay, well, that's money, but we're the ones that decide on how the money is spent. And my personal belief is that the money is better spent on beginning the planning and studying and feasibility of our next capital projects. As the resolution is written, we have addressed all the issues that need to be addressed at Christiansburg High School as far as safety concerns. We've got those taken care of. And if we need money to address any of the other safety concerns of any of the other schools, those are taken care of. But I look at this as going back to the Board of Supervisors and saying, okay, you've offered $400,000. We appreciate it for repairs, but we think the best use of that money is this.
Okay, and I am perfectly fine with that. I just don't want to sit on this and then all of a sudden that money's gone because we have not acted.
That's the reason it's on the agenda.
Right. So, for me, it would be to go ahead and act on that and, you know, so we can kind of move this pot of money away from all the budgeting that's going on.
Okay.
I agree. We need to ask for it now.
Yeah, so I'll make the motion that we, I don't necessarily say we need to ask, but if this $400,000
We accept it.
can be, we accept it to be used as we deem fit to support.
And I think
Montgomery
as we
County School.
deem, I think though we need to just state what we're going to use it for. We can't just say as. we
Okay,
deem fit.
for
I think-
feasibility studies for the Christiansburg Strand,
Right.
for capital projects.
Capital project. Does administration want to weigh in on my thoughts?
I would only say that you have the workshop scheduled on February 28th about capital. You could go ahead and request the funds, perhaps leave it a little more open-ended and say that specific projects would be provided following the completion of the February 28th workshop. I mean, we all know the Christiansburg schools are going to be right there, but do you know for sure that you want to spend the whole $400,000 on the feasibility study? That's just a thought.
Okay. If it only costs two,
That we,
we'll spend
right
it
now, we
someplace else.
anticipate that's how the money would
But
be.
you anticipate.
We anticipate that's how the money would be spent. but
That's a good way to put it.
Is that a good way to put it?
Very good.
So did you have a motion, Ms. Franklin? I apologize, Sarah. Did she complete
Yeah,
the motion there?
Yeah.
The motion we have right now is to accept the $400,000
was the word you just used?
Anticipated,
Anticipated use.
yeah.
Yes. Or anticipated use.
Anticipated use for feasibility.
Right.
Anticipated use for feasibility studies for the Christiansburg Strand project, capital project. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. I'm sorry. I thought Joe did, but
No.
maybe not.
Nobody said.
No second? Okay.
Oh, you didn't get a second?
I don't believe I did, but I was a little caught
I'll
up
second
in
it.
the verbiage.
I thought no offense, I thought I did hear you, but
I
maybe
think I
not.
did.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. You've got a good clarification of the motion?
The motion says to accept the $400,000 from the Board of Supervisors with an anticipated use for feasibility studies in the Christiansburg Strand for capital projects.
All those wow, it's 11. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, board members, for that. Any other items of unfinished business by school board member? Hearing none, I'll move to new business. I know we have one item of new business. Ms. Franklin, you mentioned about the calendar, approving the calendar date on January the 29th.
Make
That
a
the-
motion that we have a public hearing for the budget, for purpose of budget hearing. Yeah, on February the 29th at 7 o'clock,
January 29th.
January. At 7 o'clock.
We're almost done. We're almost done. Yes.
Second? Second?
Second.
Got a second? Okay. Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We now have a budget date. Any other items of new business by school board members?
Yes, I make a motion that we reevaluate the mission statement and the vision statements as put forth in the
Policy.
policy.
Second.
Any discussion on Mr. Fivers's motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll be reviewing the mission and vision statements. Any other items of new business by school board members? Hearing none, moving to announcements and information. Any announcements and information? School board members.
I have 3, I'm sorry. First, the NAACP Martin Luther King program will be on Sunday, the 20th, I believe at 3 o'clock at Schaefer Memorial Baptist Church. The Black History Quiz Bowl will be February the 23rd at 2 o'clock at Christiansburg High School. At this point, we have 5 teams from across the district. Hope that everyone can attend, and it's a lot of fun and a lot of education. And you all will remember I addressed this board at our last meeting in December about the Dialogue on Race meeting in Blacksburg on the January the 19th from 2 to 10 with lunch served, and I would hope that board members, superintendent, staff, anyone, everyone would attend. It should be a good afternoon.
Did you say January 19th?
January 19th
From 2 to,
from 2 to 10 at the Blacksburg Rec Center.
okay. 2 to
Did I
10.
say
10
that
to
right?
2?
10 to 2, right?
I was a
Yeah.
little confused.
10 to 2.
Okay, 10 to 2.
Is that a Saturday?
10 to 2, right,
Is that a
10 to 2.
Saturday?
With a nice,
It
yes,
is. Can you come late?
sure.
Any other announcements and information by school board members? Next item on the agenda is upcoming school board meetings, and you see that we have one on January the 14th. It is a budget work session. We'll be across the hall in the multipurpose room, and we begin at 7 p.m. And then you also see the January 22nd date and the agenda items so far on that date. With that, I ask for an adjournment.
So moved.
All those in favor, do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, board members, and thank you, members of the audience and public.